Hello! For this part we're going to be creating a high-low number game. Now this is going to be one of the first assessments that I'm going to be giving you as we go through with this, and it's a lovely little task where you're going to get Python to generate a random number between 1 and 100, and then we're going to use an if statement, and we're going to basically see how far away the guess is, or the user's guess is. We're then going to look at extending that a little bit further. We're going to use a while loop. So there's going to be two videos here. The first one is going to be looking at this part, and then the next video is going to be looking at obviously this part here. Now I'm not going to give you the full solution because I'd like you to try it out, and I'd like you to see what you can get working. Even if you don't get everything working, that'll be absolutely fine, but I'd like to see how far you can get. Now underneath the task, you'll notice there's an assignment drop, and there's also something which is restricted. Now the way this is going to work is as soon as you've submitted to the assignment drop, it'll unlock the answer below, and then it'll show you my solution. But don't forget, you might come up with a completely different solution to what I've come up with. Both might be correct, okay, and maybe you'll make a better solution than what I'm gonna think of anyway. But I'd like you to try it out. Now what I might do, which is one slight change, I may put two assignment drops, one for the basic game, one for the more complex game. Now I'm going to talk you through this a little bit, and I'm going to talk you through using a flowchart. So before we go, this is what we're going to look at. This flowchart's going to look at the first part of it, and then I'm going to pause the video. You're going to try it out, and then you can then unpause it, and we'll look at the second part of the video, okay, which is going to look then at the extension task. So we are going to get Python to generate a random number. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to click on start, and then we're going to get Python then to generate a number between 1 and 100. So that's going to be the first part, right? We're going to use a random library, which we haven't used before, but I'll give you that one, that's fine. We're then going to ask the user to input a guess, which is going to be then of type integer, so we're asking for a number. And then we're going to make a decision. We're going to use an if statement. And the if statement is going to be something like this. Is the user's guess equal to the computer? Now, it may be the case that you do guess, and you guess correctly. So we've got two specific options here. The first one I'm going to go with is no, the guess is incorrect. So if the guess is incorrect, what we need to basically say is incorrect, and then we need to work out how far they were away by taking the computer guess away from the user guess. And then the other option is saying well done, great, fantastic, you've done really well, and your guess is correct. Now we also then need to end this program, and I'm just going to put an end terminated down there on the bottom, and then just join the lines up. So that is what the program is going to look like, right? That's the overview of the program in its entirety, the first part. So how does this actually look then on something like Repel? So what we're going to have to do, I'm just going to move everything around now so you'll be able to see the flowchart, and we'll be able to see then what I'm trying to write down at the same time. Now, just as I'm setting this up, I just want to remind you, I'm not going to show you the full program in this tutorial. I'm going to show you the first part, how to start it off, and then we'll go for it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say from random import random int, and then what we're going to do underneath that, we're importing a library called random integer. Now you may see this if you look at other tutorials. Some people do write it in a slightly different way, but that's how I'm doing it. So I'm going to make another variable now, which is computer, and then I say randint, and then 1 to 100. So this now is basically, if we read it backwards, generate a random integer between 1 and 100, and then store it as a variable called computer. Now you'll see I've made a little mistake here. It should be randint, henceforth why there was a red line underneath it. So the top line should read from random import randint. Now you may see it written like this, random.randint, right? I don't need to because I'm basically doing a shortcut on the top here. So the first part is we're importing a random library. The next thing we've got there is we're generating a random number between 1 and 100, and we're storing it in a variable called computer. We're then going to ask the user for an input or a guess, and then essentially you're going to use an if statement. So I'm going to make a variable here, user guess equals, and then I'm going to put int input, and then something like give me your guess, or what's your guess. It doesn't really matter this part, but we need some form of input here. And from this point on, I'd like you to stop the video, because you should have enough knowledge now in making this program work. So all I need you to think of is we need to now do an if statement, we need to do a comparison, we need what happens if they are correct, and then what happens if they're incorrect. So pause the video here and then try and complete your program. The next part of this is going to look now at the more complex program that we're going to look at. And again, once you submit your answer on Moodle, I will give you then a model answer as well. Hopefully you've had some success with the first task and you've submitted it to Moodle and you've seen then and compared how I would have solved the program. The next part of this is we're going to use now a loop. And the idea is that we're going to loop around the program until we actually get to the proper number. Now we could change this, we could give the user say 3 guesses as an example, and for that we'd use a for loop, but I'm just going to use a while loop here. So the program is going to start in the same way, right? We're going to have a start and we're going to generate a random number. And then you'll notice I've got this diamond. This is a while true. So in other words, this is going to loop continuously until I break out of that loop. Now there's a number of ways that we can do this, but the while true is probably the quickest and the easiest. Inside this loop, we have an input, which is we're asking the user to input a guess, which again is going to be of type integer. So that's the first thing that's always going to happen at the start of this loop. And then what we need to do is we need an if statement. So we need to basically say if the user's guess is greater than the computer guess. Because if it is greater, we need then to output your guess is too high, and then we follow it around again and we ask the user then for another guess. Now if it's still too high again, then this is just going to loop around continuously. The top part will never change because it's outside of the loop. So this part will just keep on going around and around and around until we actually get to a answer. Now if it's less than, then we need another if statement or an elif. So this part now says, is the user's guess less than the computer? And if it is, we're going to say, well, the guess is too low, and we're going to go back in this loop. So we've got a yes and a no. Now, what happens if the user's guess isn't too large or not too small? Well, it must be perfect. And what we need to do is say, great, lovely, you've guessed correctly, and we need to basically break the program and stop it running, because obviously the game is over. So that gives you a little bit of an idea as to how this program is going to work. Okay, so we've got a while true, which is a continuous loop through 2 if statements, and then we've got an else. So how is this going to work? Now if I switch back to my Python editor, you can see I've got from random, import randint, computer equals randint 1 to 100. So our program's starting exactly the same. Now we need to put something in called a while true, which is my loop. So you can see I put while true and I've got a colon on the end because that signifies the start then of my while loop. The first thing we then need to do is ask the user to give us a number, and this is exactly the same now as what we've done before. So we need to think of a variable name. So again, I'm going to go with the user guess, and then I'm going to say equals int input, and then something like give me a number or give me your guess. Now the next thing we're going to do then is we're going to go straight into if statements. And what I would do is I would pause the video and make sure you have this up, this screen, because this will help you go through and make a logical step through your program. And again, I will show you a solution to this once you've submitted something to Moodle. Best of luck.